would like for someone to please make a motion for us to come out of our closed meeting.
I move that we come out of closed meeting.
So, thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right. The next is the certification of the closed meeting. The Lynchburg City School Board certifies that in the closed meeting just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in a closed meeting and lawfully permitted to be so discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. We recommend that the school board approve the certification of closed meeting in accordance with the Code of Virginia by roll call vote. Right? Okay. Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Dr. Brennan?
I agree.
Yes.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Mills?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. All right. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next part of our agenda where we move special presentation so that we can get our children up here presenting and then home. But first we're going to have a brief presentation from our auditors. Mr. Beckles?
Good evening. Our auditors, Brown and Edwards, are here tonight to provide the board report on the results of the 2018 school board audit. We have the manager, Julie Moore, and Norman Yoder. Tonight, Ms. Moore is going to present the report, and then if you have any questions, either Ms. Moore or Mr. Yoder will be able to answer any questions from their presentation.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. We'll be brief. Thank you for accommodating our schedule a bit and moving us up. Brown Edwards does audit quite a few local governments and other school systems, and tonight we have to be two places at once. So you're helping us out with that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think all I'll say is that it's good to be here, and we appreciate being able to serve you all and the responsiveness and help that we get from your people here. Julie ran the audit, and I think she's going to just cover a few brief highlights, and if you have questions, we can take those at the end. So I'll just step back here.
Good evening. First, I want to give kudos to your staff. They are great. When we come in, you know, we do our field work, we ask tons of questions, and we leave. You know, that's not really the end of the audit. We have tons of email, phone calls, you know, things that we need, and especially this year because we had a new accounting standard that got implemented. So that didn't come in till late, and so it was a big push at the end to make sure that we got everything entered so that we could get everything out on time. So your staff always does a great job with getting us stuff, and they always do it with a smile on their face, and we really, really appreciate that. If you take nothing else away from what I tell you in the next 5 minutes, just know that you got a clean opinion this year. That's all everybody strives for, is that they want, you know, that clean opinion on their financial statements, and the city and schools got that this year. The biggest thing for the schools this year was the implementation of GASB 75. That's the accounting and financial reporting of other post-employment benefits, OPEB. If you remember, about 4 years ago, we implemented GASB 68, which was pension, where the standard said that you had to put the liability for your pension on the books. Well, with GASB 75, you had to put your OPEB liability on the books. And the schools have 3 OPEBs. They have a local OPEB for their health care. They have 2 with VRS. One is called GLI, Group Life Insurance, and one is HIC, which is Teachers Health Insurance Credit. And so those 3 OPEBs liabilities had to be put on the government-wide statements, and a restatement had to be made. So about $22 million at the beginning of the year of liability had to go in your books. That's probably the biggest change on the financial statements this year that occurred. Everything else is pretty consistent with last year. You're going to also get some letters. I don't think you've gotten them yet. And one of them is an audit committee letter, and it's called those communication with those charged with governance. And in that letter, we point out things that we think are important for you to tune in on. Like we note that there's the GASB 75 implementation. We note estimates, because estimates are not concrete numbers. They can change from time to time. So we hone you in on those, like your capital assets, the lives assigned to those, are estimates based on prior history with, prior asset lives. The OPEB and pension are estimates. They're based on actuary evaluations that are done. And then your self-insurance, that's another estimate based on an actuary evaluation, because at year end, you have an IBNR, which is incurred but not reported. Claims that have been made, but you haven't paid yet, you still owe them at year end. So that's an estimate that's recorded on the books. Also in the letter, we point out disclosures. If you have a hard time going to sleep at night, these are the perfect things to read. Again, that's like the commitment disclosure, capital assets, the pension footnote, and then the new OPEB are great reads to help you get to sleep at night. The rest of the letter is pretty standard. We talk about how we had no disagreements with management. Management didn't go out and consult with any other accountants or auditors that we're aware of, and things of that nature. The next letter you're going to get is a management letter. Management letters, when we're doing the audit, if we come across things that we think can strengthen your controls, then we'll, give you suggestions for those. Well, this year we did have a comment, and it ended up being a material weakness, and it's the segregation of duties of payroll. And what happened was there was a design flaw implementation when May 1st they went live with a new software, and the payroll supervisor had access to more than what she should have. I'd like to point out that the school system was very aware of this. They came to us about this and said, hey, we just implemented this software. We realized that she should not have this much access. We're working on it. They went to their consultant with the software company. They consulted with other IT people, and they in mid to late October, they implemented controls to limit her access. So, and we did do some extra testing around this. We didn't note anything of any issues around all of this, but there was a window of opportunity, so we are required to report this. And because it's a material weakness, it's also going to be in the CAFR for your city and schools. Under the schedule of findings and question costs, there is going to be a material weakness in regards to this, with management's response explaining what happened. And then in the compliance report, where compliance report for internal controls for government auditing standards, we note this issue. And that's all I have. Any questions?
It's always nice to get a positive report, and we greatly appreciate the efforts that you all do on our behalf, but also the staff that work so hard to make sure that we're getting it done correctly. So thank you, and kudos to Mr. Beckles and his department. Any other comments? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, moving on along to a great presentation. Mr. Profit, the principal of Lincoln Middle School, and his students on the new school newspaper, SPOT. Good evening.
Good evening, Mrs. Morrison. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, Dr. Edwards, Dr. Copeland. How are y'all doing?
Great.
Great. We're here tonight because Lincoln Middle School wanted to present you with a copy of our first school newspaper in the history of our school, at least from the indications that I have. And we have brought along with us tonight Mrs. Elizabeth Short, who is the teacher of the class, along with Evelyn Gowan, Michaela Harvey, and Nora Hamilton, who are staff members of the paper. And it's an exciting time for us to have this paper be at Lincoln Middle School. This paper is able to be in place due to extended learning time classes we have at Lincoln Middle School. And those classes focus on science, technology, English, and math, as well as other enrichment activities that students can participate in. And so what happened this year was this class, as they formulated their curriculum, decided they wanted to start a school newspaper which again, as I said before, is a first for us. And so the journalism class that was created was able to come up with different topics that are student related. The students actually edit the paper. They actually write the articles under Mrs. Short's supervision, and we have brought copies for everyone tonight for you all to have those, okay? But awesome look here. It's all professional. It's in color. They do a great job working on it. They also learn how to sell ads as well as part of working through that piece of the curriculum, and we're very proud of that, and we wanted to bring that before you tonight. Mrs. Short,
Thank you.
any comments you'd like to say?
We're having a great time. We have an absolutely amazing group of students who are working really hard, and they have learned a great deal about journalism this year, I think. They create their own interviews. They create everything. I'm so proud of them. So.
And one last point on the title spot, actually that came from the students, and it also is tied into our VTSS, Virginia Tier System Supports SPOT SPOT Initiative for Successful Learner, Positive Role Model, Outstanding Citizen, and Team Player. So that's kind of great how that all worked itself out, even through the students who came up with that. So that was great.
Excellent.
So I'll let them go ahead and deliver those, but thank you so much
Thank
for letting us
you.
come before you tonight.
Thank you, thank you.
I mean, that's really cute.
Thank you.
That's pretty awesome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for presenting, and we'll look forward to reading more.
Madam Chair, this certainly reflects the conjoining of all of our C's, from critical thinking all the way to creativity. It's amazing. Wow.
Any other board comments? Moving right along to the third part of our special presentation. It relates to school board comments relating to a very special meeting on Monday at Heritage High School as part of our community engagement outreach, where we will be having sit-down conversations with professionals, school administrators, our superintendent, board members, principals, and members of the community to help us look at data, come up with questions, come up with suggestions, to have those tough conversations. The first thing this board did when we started last year was to find what we thought was the best superintendent to get us to where we wanted to go, and who was not afraid to have those hard conversations and tough discussions. And she's led the board through those conversations. They're not always comfortable, but we've learned that we grow from having those conversations. We know that the Equity Task Force and the Health Advisory Board have also engaged in those conversations, and I know that later on tonight we will hear from those boards and those meetings. It is very important for us to have the Lynchburg City community become a part of this conversation, because we're not going to get the results that this board wants to accomplish without everyone being a part of that. Every teacher, every parent, every community member. We care about this community, and we want the best for all our students, to look at those achievement gaps, to look at what we need to do to make sure that we are doing it the right way. And I'll please come out and be a part of this conversation on Monday.
Can I give it a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay. Just because this is going to be our first annual, hopefully annual, community conversation, and it's a little bit different than just us as central administration or building administration presenting to the community. We call it a conversation because we do really want your input. So I figured I'd take a quick moment to kind of go over the overview of what this is going to look like, so people have a frame of reference, and whether you're sitting here in the audience, we have a lot of people in the audience, or if you're listening at home. So I'll do a brief overview at the beginning of our 4 goals as we move forward to working on our strategic plan. And then the participants will have an opportunity to attend 2 of our 4 breakout sessions. We do have 4 breakout sessions planned, but because we really want to engage in a conversation, and we know that that takes time, we're asking the participants to choose 2 of them. In each of the breakout sessions, they'll each be facilitated by a different staff member, And the board members will be split up amongst those breakout sessions. So I know there's a lot of questions about who's at these conversations. So in the room, you'll have the directors, the supervisors, you'll have principals, assistant principals. We really, really encourage our teachers, our staff, even our students, even our middle school students. It would be great to have them there because every voice is an important voice, in addition to our families, our community members, and those who really have a genuine interest in supporting our students. It was real tough to narrow it down to 4 things to start with, and I will emphasize start. This is a start of a conversation that we want to have, and I anticipate after Monday night, and if we do have bad weather, we will have a weather day, a snow day, or an alternate day. So let me just say that too in looking at the weather. But I do anticipate having smaller subgroup conversations after we get started. So the 4 areas, one, in looking at, as Susan said, data. One of the biggest things we've been looking at is our reading data. I've been sharing with the board every week. We take a look at a different school and population reading data. We've really been looking at the reading data for Black students across the division for the last couple weeks. At the Equity Task Force, we looked at the reading data for economically disadvantaged students at the middle school level. But Dr. Bruce is here and team, we would say that reading and literacy is an area that we really want to focus on. So if that's something that you're passionate about, whether you're a teacher of reading or you're a parent, a family member, a community member, you have an after-school program because there's a community engagement piece as well. Reading is one of the areas that we're going to focus on when we have one of our breakout groups, and we're really going to take a deep look at our data and what we call what we are going to look at are some of the gaps that we have there. Another area that'll be facilitated by a different team is special education and the supports and services that we receive, that special education students receive. So again, if that's an area that you're passionate about, whether it be training for special education teachers, supports for special education students. I met with a parent group a couple weeks ago. We talked about what are the after-school opportunities for our special ed students. So there will be a team that will be engaging in that discussion, and again, looking at some breakout groups for that. Another one that we looked at are behavioral supports. And alternatives to suspension. And Ms. Brown and team will be facilitating that. And again, just looking at what do we do, we're following a VTSS model, but what do we do for positive behavioral supports for our students, and what are our alternatives to suspension, because we know every minute that they spend in instruction in the classroom is vital. So we want to make sure that we're providing our students, our staff, with those opportunities. And also, you've heard me talk a little bit about absenteeism and what are we doing as a city to make sure that our students are attending school regularly. So that's a combined session. If that's your passion and you have an interest in that and want to dig a little bit deeper in that discussion, you can. And then finally, the last one is nicely known as FACE, Family and Community Engagement. I also add involvement, which kind of overlays almost everything that we do. And Ms. Reeves has been working with the community and community partners on multiple things. But even as we look at how can the community support us with our reading initiative? We know, like I said, we have after-school programs, Saturday programs, things are going on in churches and organizations. We have mentors. We have buddies coming in to read to our kids. We even have our kids reading to our kids. So how can we all work together with those things? So a lot of conversation about partnership and some of the things that we do within the division as far as family and community engagement. And all of that, I say that to say, is looking at students through the lens of their academic, social, emotional growth, well-being, and success. So while reading is very academic, special education, the behavioral supports, we're talking about their behavioral growth as well as possible, what are the ties to mental trauma, mental illness, and things like that in our schools. So I really hope that everyone will come out and join us at Heritage High School 5:30 on Monday night and be a part of the conversation. Bring your A game and be ready to engage in dialogue back and forth with the entire team. So thanks.
Thank you. Board members, Dr. Brennan?
Can I just make a brief comment, which is one of the areas that Dr. Edwards talked about was the reading level that's going to be looked at for the community program. And I know that there are a lot of people who are concerned about reading levels and the achievement gap and the impact that that has on our students. And there was a meeting of the Equity Task Force this past week that was run by Ethel Reeves and by Dr. Edwards, which I think, having been a member of that committee in the past, really was a big step forward as far as the number of people that participating, the discussion that was had, the data that was passed out. I really think it's going to be a great opportunity to continue the communication. And I think this dialogue, those meetings are going to help a lot. Having said that, I know that there are a lot of people who have been involved in the issue about the achievement gap in this community for many years. And there's a group called the Key Communicators that were really the original folks involved with the Equity Task Force. And they have been concerned about this for a long time and want to really raise this board's awareness and keep our awareness on track on those lines. And I want to do a couple of things. One is I want to thank them for their energy and their enthusiasm and their keeping our feet to the fire. And I also want to mention three things that I think are their main message to us as a board, which is, one is that they really want us to listen to the concerns of the community. They want us to know what's going on in the community, and I really think Monday is a good start to that, and then from there on out, other ways that we can do that. They really want the board to communicate with the community, even if the topic is difficult, even if it's not something we're doing well in. It's hard to talk about it. We need to take those issues and talk about it. And then lastly, they really want to see the data, and we all want to see the data that pertains to how our students are doing, because we can't resolve the issue without that happening. So I think that those are all issues that this board are in support of and want to do, and I just wanted to make that comment that I think we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Other board comments? I also, Dr. Brennan, think that fits in well with the board goals that we drafted in September, that we want to develop and implement a 5-year strategic plan to prioritize the needs of Lynchburg City Schools, develop and implement a comprehensive communication engagement plan to enhance relationships with our stakeholders, and develop and implement a plan to enhance growth, development, and success for all students. And these are things that we identified as priorities and that we've been working diligently to accomplishing. So thank you. Any other comments? All right. We have a lot of people here, so I'm sure we have a few public comments tonight. So that would move us to public comment part of the board. In accordance with policy BDDH, public participation, the school board welcomes requests and comments as established in the guidelines within that policies. Individuals who wish to speak before the school board shall have an opportunity to do so at this time. And I now need to read our protocol. Persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures, and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to his or her official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meetings or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit his or her comments to 5 minutes. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of his or her presentation. A group may have no more than one spokesperson. The total allotted time for public comment at school board meetings is 30 minutes. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input. The board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussion at this time. Okay. All right, our first speaker for tonight is Ms. Chesney.
My name is Melissa Chesney. Thank you for allowing me to come and speak. I am a bus driver with Lynchburg City Schools, and I am here to talk about our pay scale. My first comment is thank you for hearing us, hearing our teachers, and in general, our community at large of all of our employees here that feel that they need to be compensated for their time fairly. I think it's very good that you guys have stated that you are hoping to get us a pay raise every other year and other things that you are trying to move forward on your end. I know that it cannot be easy to juggle the budget that you have in front of you, especially when the city council has said that they're going to be in a deficit and et cetera, et cetera. My comment tonight is that no matter what the city council decides, if they can give you more money in your budget or not, I believe that there is wiggle room to accommodate those of us that have been waiting a very long time to see a pay raise or to be compensated fairly. I have pulled everything, every single pay scale there is available, and I have seen that it is not just the bus drivers and the school cafeteria workers and the aides and the instructional assistants that are getting far below market value for what they do for our students every day, but it is across the board, and I believe that there is still wiggle room inside what we already have to compensate more fairly for what people do, regardless of if we get a larger budget. And my comment is, I hope that you will consider that, even if the city council says no to increasing the budget for payroll this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Good evening to all of you. And as always, thank you for your service to the youth of Lynchburg. And thank you also for the opportunity to speak tonight. For those of you who don't know, my name is Carl Luce and I am president of the Lynchburg Education Association. September 7th, 2016, that was the first time I addressed the school board as president of the Lynchburg Education Association with my concerns about compensation for the employees of this division. Since then, the board has dealt with a slew of different issues for the division and has also undergone some personnel changes as well. We've seen 3 different superintendents during that time, and there have also been changes in city council. The one thing that hasn't changed has been the step freeze for LCS employees. We hope that ends tonight. September 7, 2016, since that day, the LEA has created a variety of step scale plans of its own, enlisted the support of the community through social media campaigns, spoken to city council on multiple occasions in support of Lynchburg City Schools, taken to the streets to represent the needs of the division and this board, and worked to develop a compensation plan with the offices of finance and personnel, both of which have put in significant man hours into a variety of different pay scales. Speaking of man hours, I know for a fact that this very board has invested a great deal of time in finding a way to get this done, as has the Office of Superintendent. September 7, 2016, since that date, I have stood in front of this board or one of its iterations no less than 10 times explaining the salary needs for our employees, sharing facts and figures, sharing comparisons and analyses, and sharing the true life stories of the people affected by this freeze. Those needs still exist. Those facts and figures have only dropped Lynchburg further down the list. And these real-life, hard-working, multiple-job-having people are still being financially devastated by this freeze. But we fully expect that to change tonight. We have here tonight just a fraction of the people who will stand with you to support the pay schedule that you've been working on. A pay schedule that will drop the top of the pay scale by 10 years. A pay schedule which will recognize employees for years of service. A pay schedule which will guarantee every LCS employee earns a living wage. A pay scale which will increase the pay for everyone in the division. And a pay schedule which will allow employees to plan for the future. A future that includes them staying right here in Lynchburg and investing in our children and our community for many years to come. We are here to show our gratitude, to show our support, and to let you know that we will take this message to the community and to City Council with you. It's been a long time since September 7th, 2016, and an even longer time since this scale was frozen. Let's all take that first step together, and let's take it tonight. Thank you.
Mr. McCain?
Good evening. This is my third time being in front of you talking about the achievement gap. And when I received the data, I looked at it, and the first thing I looked at was 2016. That was the last time I was in front of you. And then I looked at the numbers from 2018, and I'll be very honest. I really didn't want to come because I was really embarrassed. The numbers, the same as they were in 2016. And I'm going to read some of these numbers. There are so many people I think are not aware of what's going on with the black students that's creating the achievement gap. I'm going to start in the third grade, and this is from 2017, 2018. 45% of the black students flunk English. Third grade, math, 48% fail math. Fourth grade, English, 43% fail. Fourth grade math, 39% fail. Fifth grade, English, 39% fail. Fifth grade math, 45% fail. Fifth grade science, 42% fail. Fifth grade Virginia study, 28% fail. And the numbers are the same. We're not seeing any change pretty much in these numbers. Sixth grade English, 43% fail. Seventh grade English, 44% fail. Eighth grade English, 51% fail. Eighth grade science, 77% fail. I don't think I need to read anymore. The problem is, we can't accept this. You know, we've been here, we talked about this, some of us have been involved with the school system for 20 years. We're still talking about some of the same problems that we talked about 20 years ago. And I'll be very honest, if these numbers were reversed and white students were this percentage failing, they would be in arms saying that probably none of you would be on the board. I'm going to be very honest. Why should we accept these kind of numbers? You know, let me just remind you of something. Sometimes we may forget, and let's forget about the numbers or the percentage. We're talking about kids. We are talking about children. Third grade is the most important grade we have in our education system. Children only have one chance to be a third grader, one chance. And when I look at some of these numbers, as we move up to ninth grade and eighth grade, it's not going down. They are increasing, which means that if they are not on grade level in the third grade, 9 times out of 10, they will never catch up. You know, we want to work with the school board. We want to make things happen. You know, we need to be honest with each other. You know, we need the trust part. There are a lot of things. And we hear a lot of people saying to parents, I agree, the parents could do a lot more. But let's not forget, some of them had the same experience that the black children are having today. And how are they going to help the kids when they couldn't read and they couldn't write and they couldn't do those kind of things? So, you know, I would request anyway, and that is that we get together. We would like to set a meeting with the board. I know you can't answer questions here, but there are a lot of questions and comments that we would like to make. I'm talking about the community as well as parents, because if we don't do something like that, how are you going to get them involved? You know, how are we going to do those kind of things? And it's important because we love our children. We love all the children. But we're not going to sit back any longer. We've been doing this for 20 years. And I promise you, tonight, we are not going to accept this kind of behavior from the school board. You're spending $100 million to educate 8,400 students. That's what the budget is, right around $100 million. We only have 8,400 students, and we still can't, or not getting it. What's the problem? We have, you know, when I think about it, the only thing I can really think about is, first of all, teachers don't know how to teach the kids that we see, I'm talking about, or people don't care whether they pass or not, and I hate to think that. But when we continue to see the numbers that we are seeing, what else can we assume? So what I'd like to do is, on behalf of the community, and ask for a meeting. Don't have to be a school board meeting. we can have a work session or however you want to put it, so that people have an opportunity to ask questions, receive answers, and then work together to see how we can overcome this position that we are in today. And that's what I am requesting. And again, we're not going to accept this. We need to do something. Changes need to be made. 20 years we've been going through the same kind of problem, or having the same kind of problem. And enough is enough. So that's why I'm standing here tonight. I'm not an educator, but I've been connected with it a pretty long time. So I feel like I am a part of the education system. But that's what we are requesting.
Thank you. Mr. Tweedy.
And let me just say this before I walk off. You know, we're looking to hear an answer from this board, considering what I just requested, and then we will go forward and take the next step. So I hope the step would be having a meeting, we all get together and talk about what's going on and come up with some solutions to the problems that are facing the school system and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Eugene Tweedy Jr., and I'm here as a citizen. I'm also a participant, a member of the Equity Task Force. And good evening, and thank you for letting me speak. I heard you, Dr. Brennan, and talk about, and Ms. Morrison, Dr. Edwards, talk about some of the things that's happening and upcoming expectations. And Dr. Edwards, I've had the chance to speak with you. I think you are more than equipped and able to handle any duties that come before you. But some of our concern, like Danny's and mine, has been the ongoing lack of progress in closing the achievement gap over the years. And some of the things that I like to express as far as a perspective is why we are still, after over 20 years, still dealing with this issue. And we hire new superintendents and have these expectations that they come in and make changes and we'll make progress. And often I think we don't recognize that it's an issue outside of, well, I like to put more emphasis on the issue being outside of just Lynchburg City Schools. I think Lynchburg City Schools is where things get magnetized because the kids are there and it's supposed to be an equal learning environment, right? But I think that we have to recognize that the responsibility lies on everybody, the entire community, including city council, because the kids leave, they come to school with an achievement gap or leave with one, but their parents usually have an employment gap, a medical or mental health gap, a housing gap. So it's not just a gap with the students in Lynchburg City Schools. I think that's just where it's focused often. And so, you know, I'm encouraged to, you know, get the entire community in and show some urgency on this issue. Because, I mean, we see effectual change in this city. You can just look at downtown. And people want to be there. They want to participate. You know, it's exciting and it's unifying. But I haven't really seen that with our efforts in closing this achievement gap. Yes, we do get excited. Yes, we do these things, and then it just sort of spirals out. But I'm just hoping that we see more of an urgency. I don't think that the Equity Task Force should be equal to the other advisory groups. We're not talking equality. We're talking equity. So that should be based on need, right? So the Equity Task, if the Virginia Department of Health came in and said, you have a health problem in Lynchburg City Schools, the health advisory group should take priority. But the Office of Civil Rights has said you have an equity problem in your schools. So I think the Equity Task Force should be a priority, you know, and not just because I'm serving on it, because I've thought many times about not continuing any further, but I appreciate the positivism and Dr. Edwards, the best, and I hope that we can make some progress. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda goes to Mr. Beckles, the finance report.
Good evening. You have before you the financial report for the 4 months ended October 31st, 2018. We are 4 months into the fiscal year. As far as our revenue is concerned, all of our revenues at this point are on budget, and there are no unexpected issues as far as our revenue is concerned. And quite frankly, on our expense side, it's the same. All of our expenses right now are on budget, and at this point, there are no significant items relating to our revenue or our expenses that I need to bring to your attention. I would say we're coming up on the 6 month half of the year. We are now preparing information that will allow us, or we could present to you to allow us to reallocate from budget lines. Not an increase in our budget, just reallocating some things now that we are 6 months down the road and we see some actual things compared to what we had previously budgeted. I foreshadow bringing that before you soon for a reallocation. But other than that, we do expect to receive information on the governor's budget December the 18th. So I'll try and have that report done before we leave for the winter break. And then from that perspective, if it comes out on time, then we will know, at least from the governor's budget perspective, what are our additional revenues that we can anticipate for next year. Also, I'd also like to report that our healthcare costs at this point is still below budget and less than what it was same period last year. So I don't have any healthcare cost concerns at this point. We're doing good compared to where we were same period last year.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board? Dr. Nellis?
The governor's budget, this is a proposed,
Correct.
so pretty tenuous. Fuzzy. It's not a hard number. It's just a proposed. Or
That's correct.
Okay. And when's it coming out?
December the 18th.
Still got to go through the process of being approved, which
Right.
is
Right.
Right.
You know, the governor gives his budget in December, and then they go through all the iterations and get to it, I think, sometime February, March. But the first one that comes out is just a proposal. That isn't guaranteed until it's actually passed sometime down in April, May. But at least it gives us some idea of what potentially we can expect. So as we work forward with our 2019-20 budget, anything we're working with the governor's budget numbers, everybody keep in mind that's tentative until it's such time as it is approved.
Dr. Coleman?
Madam Chair, just underscoring, that's one of the reasons why across the Commonwealth, local boards are working together. Virginia School Boards Association, Virginia Association of Superintendents, to do our advocacy to make sure that the pushback that will come from the General Assembly will not be that drastic, to support a governor who is intending to do all that he can to support local school divisions. And so that's a part of what we can do, School Board Member Nellis, to help firm up good support coming from that budget.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. That moves us to the consent part of our agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have the school board meeting minutes from November the 2nd, a regular meeting. November 19th, a student discipline committee meeting. November 20th, work session. The amended personnel report, religious exemption, fund balance recommendations for 2017-18, and Lynchburg City School Board policy updates. We recommend that the school board approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Good part of the evening, student representative comments. We have Ms. Booker from Heritage High School. We haven't, kind of like to scoot.
Okay, so at Heritage, it's been exciting and boring at the same time. Not much happened. So every quarter we have a big Pioneer Power draw. And so this quarter, Deborah Chagas is the winner of the Pioneer Power Prize. Students qualify for this drawing based on grades, behavior, and attendance. She won a pair of Beats headphones. The prizes do range from different things, so it's really fun. We inducted 4 people into the Heritage Hall of Fame. Some are coaches, well, old coaches. Some are old players. former coaches and former players. So that was exciting. That happened at the game the other night. There are Ty Gafford, Stacey Davis, Marie Updike, and Lucas Jones. Our cross-country runner, Luke Richards, finished 9th in the state for cross-country. On November 9th, he competed in the state meet running a 16:21 5K. He finished in the top 10. Pioneer Theater received 2nd place in the Regional Theater Festival. They competed in November 17th. Gear Up, the 11th grade Gear Up students from Heritage and EC Glass visited and toured the campus of Radford University on November 27th. The ones I talked to, they said it was really fun. They had a lot of fun. They liked the campus. Our Big Orange March Machine has participated in the Christmas parade, and they were also recognized as being the top band in the Veterans Day Parade. This is the plaque that they got, awarded the top band performance Veterans Day Parade at Liberty University. And in the month of November, we had Virginia College Application Week. It was a great success for the class of 2019. Many students were accepted to numerous colleges, and many students received tons of scholarship money. At the end of the week, Heritage alumni Leland Melvin came, spoke, and congratulated students for their acceptances and getting to their last year of high school. About 100 students received on-site admissions. 80% submitted at least one application, and we earned $800,032. Thank you. Couldn't get that out from scholarship money from Ferrum alone, and then we saved $26,600. I got that number, for application fees. So it was a really good success. People I talked to enjoyed it. I liked it personally. I love on-site admissions because it's just you don't have to wait for a letter in the mail, so it's great. These are a couple of the class of 19 that got accepted. We see LU, Radford, Ferrum, Randolph, and a whole bunch of other colleges. It was a really good experience. Our Heritage boys beat Glass in the first game of the season. So yes, Heritage reigns overall again. And Heritage football is going to the state championship on Saturday. We won all 3 rounds of playoffs and the semifinal game this past Saturday. The state championship will be at Liberty University Saturday at 12 noon against Phoebus. We are expecting a big turnout since it is in town. It's right around the corner. So everybody from Lynchburg can come and help us, support our guys. We're also having a send-off at 9:30. At Heritage High School on Main Street for the guys once they get on the bus. So everyone's invited. Come on, bring your loud voices and cheer our guys on so we can get that state ring so we can go back to school with some bling, And that's it. That's what's happening at Heritage.
Great. Thank you, and congratulations to the Heritage football team. We'll look forward to hearing about that outcome. And as an old graduate of Radford University, old graduate, it is a very pretty campus, so nice to see that there's still some interest in there. Thank you. All right, that moves us to school board committee reports. We have a finance committee December 13th, so there's no report since our last board meeting. The governor's school committee meets December 5th, so we haven't had one since then. Laurel's December 5th. I think we do have one from the STEM Academy.
I do, so if I may, Madam Chairman, just make a comment. So the STEM Academy Board met on November 13th, and a new piece of business was discussing sort of the financial future for the STEM Academy. And this is going to come back to us at some point for discussion and decision, so I just wanted to give a little background, which is that when the STEM Academy was first established in 2014, the idea was there would be 100 students, and that amount of students and that tuition input from the different schools would then subsidize the expenses for the school. Because of limitation of school districts' budgets, they've only had 50 students total. So they've been having since 2014 50 students rather than 100. And what's happened over the last several years is that CVCC's tuition has gone up by several percentage points, but schools have not changed their contribution per student. So unfortunately, they're sort of being challenged by the fact that their tuition costs are taking up most of their expenses. So there are a couple of options to that. One is that there was a representative from the Future Focus Foundation, which apparently was the initial nonprofit that started the academy, or the STEM Academy, talk about looking to corporations to do scholarships, to try to get funds from corporations, since these students are doing a lot of high-tech things and options that could be good employee workforce. The other option is to try to increase the number of students in the program. There are now 14 students from LCS. There are about 16 from Bedford, 12 from Campbell County, 6 from Amherst, and 2 from Appomattox. So if you increase the number of students by schools paying for those tuitions, you would increase the income. Or the last piece is the idea of increasing the tuition. We currently pay, or all school districts pay, about $5,400 per student per year. In order to cover their expenses, it would have to increase to about $5,900. So it would be about a $500 increase per student, which for us, based on our numbers, would be about $7,000 per year to cover that increase. This is going to be discussed in the next several months by the STEM Academy. I was wondering if maybe this might be an item for the Finance Committee to sort of discuss and look at, so that our representatives could go back to the Academy and have a discussion from our thoughts. So thank you for taking the time to hear that presentation.
Takes us to the advisory committees to the school board. Dr. Edwards?
Yeah. My friends, because I think everybody met this week. So I'm going to ask Ed from Career Tech, Ethel from Equity, Ann from School Health Advisory, and Willis from Special Ed to just all come up in one quick group. We can do it quickie. Look at Ed running up. So first, thank you to this team that's coming up, because they are some awesome facilitators in terms of helping with running these committee meetings. So what I'd asked them to do, and I'll jump into, is just give a quick update on the committee. And Ed, you volunteered to go first, so do it.
Chairman Morris and Dr. Edwards and members of the board, the Career Tech General Advisory Committee did meet on Thursday, November 29th. We had 14 of 20 members from the business community there. A brief summary of our agenda. We discussed CTE news throughout the school system. We had a career counselor report, mainly gearing on our testing numbers from last year and 5 different areas of testing that we do. We had a brief STEM Academy report from Mrs. Cash, who serves on our committee. We discussed the program of studies, a couple of new classes that are in there for this year, and 2 of our new classes from last year, how they were doing. We discussed the CTE annual, the VDOE Career Technical Annual Report, 14 standards, of which we passed 13 of 14, we're very happy about that. We also discussed the College Career Civic and Readiness Index, which is a new index for 2021 as a measurement of our school report cards, and we're going to come back and discuss that a lot more detail. It's a big new trend that many of you have heard about with standards accreditation. Work-based learning was discussed, the Career Expo at Liberty University that our 7th graders and seniors will be taking part of in April 9th and 10th. And then we had a hot topic session we always have about staff changes, potential staff changes due to retirements this year, and precision machining welding update, and the Lynchburg Business Regional Alliance Workforce Summit that many of us attended on October 5th, and a new program called We had a presentation given to us on West Alabama Works from Bobby Jones, who is a Workforce Investment Board member in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And a group of us from Lynchburg are planning to go to Tuscaloosa to attend a big conference with them. So that's briefly what we did last week. Thank you. Questions, comments?
Well
I
done.
spoke fast. There's only 5 minutes, right, for all of us?
Yes.
Okay.
Lots of work going on. Thank you. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I feel like my job tonight is really easy because Dr. Brennan and Dr. Edwards have really shared what it is that we did on November 28th with the newly formed group. And that in itself was exciting to see a diverse group and a larger group of members who are very interested in the work that the Equity Task Force has to do. We did talk a little bit about what equity looks like. I think many times we hear, especially in Lynchburg, about race. However, equity encompasses so much more. And so we were able to do an activity wherein the members were able to discuss things like appearance and gender and religion, those things. So we will continue that great work. Dr. Edwards did a great job of sharing what we've shared tonight about the work around the strategic plan. I think it's important that we understand as we do the equity work that it is tied into something else, and that is our strategic plan. We also talked about ways that the Equity Task Force can get involved. When you hear task force, to me that says work. And we have invited not only, well, let me share, we talked about our data, which Dr. Edwards mentioned, the middle school data, and got feedback there, but also encouraged the task force to participate in the community conversations on December 10th.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
All right.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
I had the pleasure of talking to you about the Health Advisory Committee. We have 18 members of the committee this year. We had 10 members present when we met for the first time on November 28th. And before we met, I sent an email to them just asking what some of their interest areas might be so that we could spend our time productively and discuss what they were interested in. And those areas sort of ended up in 3 categories. They wanted to talk about nutrition, school nutrition program, and just nutrition in general for our students. Also, family life education was on their agenda, and student wellness. And so we conducted an activity with them which allowed them to give us more information about those topics and what they were most interested in. We asked them 4 questions in each one of those areas. And the questions were, what would you like to know more about? Is there something that you could see that we are doing that you'd like to see changed? We also asked them how they could help or other members of the community could help us in those areas. And we also asked them about what some things that we are doing well that they'd like to see us continue to do. So they gave us lots of information. And we're right now in the process of compiling that information. We also shared with them some of the things that the school division is currently doing in the area of student wellness and health-related activities. So we had a very good meeting. It's a very vocal and invested and serious group of people. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As your young special education director, I just had to throw that out, Dr. Edwards. So I have the pleasure of giving you a brief update about your Special Education Advisory Committee, and I reported to you earlier in the school year about the participation rate as a result of your initiative to increase community participation, and I had mentioned that we had wonderful turnout. Well, I was surprised this past November we had the best turnout that I've had in any of the minutes that we've collected over the years. So they're really busy, but with that participation comes a big to-do list. The advisory committee evaluated the disability awareness activities that they sponsored and gave us some feedback. One of the specific items was, Willis, when you advertise the activity, if you could advertise as early as opening school in August for the October activity, it would be beneficial. So we've written that into our plan for the upcoming school year. They have nominated and elected officers. So Kelly Reichert's the chair for this year, Stephanie Early's the vice chair, and then Daniel England is going to serve as secretary. So they will now begin to take over the total leadership of and facilitating those meetings, and your special ed administrators are just there as a support. There's a state special education advisory committee. We have a regional rep, not in Lynchburg, but up in the Stanton area, and we are reporting on after each meeting to that regional rep, and that information subsequently goes on to the state special education advisory committee. So what your committee is doing is also being communicated to the State Department of Education. Our next meeting will be February 19th, and one of the focus areas that evening will be on goal setting for the upcoming school year, developing 1920 recommendations, and then also to receive public input on the special education annual plan that will come to you. And that's it. Thank you.
Lots of busy things.
Yes, and again, I can't thank my team enough for working with the community, but I also want to echo the sentiments of participation. One of the things that I wanted to have happen was really get more people involved in the conversation about our kids. And I think it might have been either Mr. McCain or I'm not sure if it was Mr. Tweedy who said the Equity Task Force needs to be a priority. And one of the things that I noticed in attending some of the meetings, equity is a priority across all the work that we do. And when I speak about equity habits, I really want that to be the priority, not just our task force here, but really in the work that we do. And I know when we were at the School Health Advisory Committee, we talked about some equity issues in terms of just even the family life curriculum and things like that. So it is out there, and I am proud of all of the community support that we have, and continue to welcome that as well. And everybody on the task force and committees, please come out to community conversation so that we can continue that good work.
Great, thank you. All right, that takes us to new business. The first item under new business, high school program of studies for 2019-2020. And Dr. Edwards, I assume you're
Dr.
Bruce. Good evening.
Each year, the school board reviews and approves the high school program of studies for the upcoming school year. The high school program of studies is updated each fall, and it does reflect state and local requirements and course offerings for our high school students. The Virginia Department of Education Standards of Accreditation, which is done every other year, and annual legislative updates drive much of what's found in that document. Graduation requirements, including required course credits, required SOL tests, and types of diplomas offered are set by the state. The high school program of studies is used by our teachers, counselors, and parents as students select courses to take each year. Scheduling of high school students typically begins the first week of February. A team made up of high school administrators, counseling directors, and various members of the Departments of Special Education, Student Services, and Curriculum and Instruction have met over the past 3 months to work on this handbook. And the team worked to ensure that the handbook included all the graduation information consistent with the Virginia Department of Education requirements. And we do have students on different graduation paths based on when they entered 9th grade. The main updates for this year's handbook include new courses in study skills. We did have one for students in advanced classes, but we did not have a study skills course for regular level classes. So we've got that added. We've got a computer science course added, which meets requirements for credits in math, science, and career and technical education as well. We've got a new physical education course, a Hip Hop 2 class that will count as a sequential elective, which is required for all students. A sequential elective would be required. Hip hop would fill that requirement for students who are interested, and also additional engineering courses. It also includes clarity on testing requirements, class rank, sequential electives, and offerings at the Virginia Governor's School, Central Virginia Governor's School, and the STEM Academy at CVCC. So tonight we bring this to you as an informational item, and it'll be brought back in January for approval. Any questions?
Dr. Brennan?
Dr. Bruce, thank you so much for that presentation. And as I read through the program, it's so impressive how many courses there are and the breadth and depth of the courses that we offer in the high school is just really terrific. And thank you so much for all your work and your staff's work. And also all the dual enrollment programs, that opportunity is just terrific. I have 3 questions which are really not questioning the current program, but just information if you could help me with these. One is that we've talked before about the cost of AP exams, and I know that in there, I think on page 35, they talk about their financial hardships. We will address that. Can someone help again? I think either Dr. Copeland or Mr. Beckles may have talked before about that we've kind of gone through different phases of sometimes we paid for this test, sometimes we paid part of the test. Where do we currently stand as far as subsidizing AP testing?
You want me to? Right now, we charge students $40 per AP test. The actual cost is right around $96, so we do subsidize a portion of that. If the student qualifies as economically disadvantaged, that would be $15 per course, or per test. If a student cannot pay that, there are arrangements made through the bookkeeper's office where they can get a fee waiver or a fee reduction.
Yeah, great, thank you. So the cost is really $90, did you say?
About right around 96.
Right, so that's great, thank you. Question number 2 is, and this may be something to discuss in between our meetings, but I know that there's a section talking about athletic eligibility for freshmen going to college. That in Division I, it's based on the college, Division II, it's 2.0. Has there been discussion in the past, or should there be discussion in the future about having some type of a grade cutoff for student athletes in the schools? For what grades they can have to participate in the sport. So if they have failing grades, for example, are they allowed to participate? Is there any regulation about that?
We follow the Virginia High School League, and that requires a certain number of courses that they pass. We have in the past had higher standards, but that was not something this board has discussed in a couple of years. It was an interest of Mr. Polly. But we had lots of feedback from principals and parents and student athletes about if they met these requirements, or the same requirements across the board. So that's not something that we've taken as an issue.
Okay. So I'm sorry, Ms. Marston. So is that in this policy, or in this, or where is that?
It's not part of the program of studies, but it's something that you get as a student athlete when you sign up to participate in a sport. They give you those requirements, and your parents and students sign off on them, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Great, thank you. And the last question is, can you help me with the difference between the standard diploma and the advanced study diploma? I know, comparing them, that there are different requirements as far as the number of electives, but why are they different, and what's the
So the state, they offer 3 diplomas for our students, and the state is the one that awards diplomas. So there is a standard diploma, which requires 22 courses to be passed, and they signify exactly how many in each area have to be passed, and how many associated SOL tests have to be passed in order to verify the credit. So the standard diploma is 22 credits, the advanced diploma is 26 credits. An applied studies diploma is our students with disabilities who meet the requirements in their IEP. So the state sets all of that for us, and then we just provide the courses so that they can meet those requirements.
So of our graduating seniors, how many would have a standard diploma and how many would have an advanced diploma?
I would have to pull that from probably our counseling departments. I wouldn't have that right off.
Okay. Is that an information that we could get?
Put that in our newsletter.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Ms. Evans?
I have a question about the class rank.
Okay.
And the grade point average. There was confusion this year because it was different than what was stated. So is this different from what's in the current book right now for this year? Because I'm reading this and I still see the, 9th grade you have to have the 4.3, 4.3, 4.4, but I don't see where it says you will be individually ranked. I'm just wondering why we're not spelling that out, since that was such an issue this year.
So on page 31 in the board packet, page 4 of the program of studies, if you see that, the second paragraph says students are ranked based on their overall earned GPA. Is the first sentence.
I can't find,
So
I'm
they are
just on
ranked
the grade
based
point
on their-
average calculator and class rank.
Yep, that tells how it's calculated. If you
Okay.
look over on the next page where it says grade point average, calculations and class rank.
Okay.
Over there, it does say students are ranked based on
Okay.
their overall earned
Okay.
GPA. We still did keep the summa cum laude designation
Right,
for
I saw
students.
that.
So we do have that for students who are really,
So
that
just
have that
across
high
the board,
GPA.
if you have that GPA, you have that.
Right, and it is printed on the transcript for each
Okay.
of those students. So we did have that.
And if this is what we're saying in August, this is what we're going to stick with all year.
That's what we are going to stick with all year, yes.
'Cause it- you know, I mean, that's hard when it didn't
It
happen
is.
this year.
It is. And I believe the grade point average rank and calculation and some things have been different over a couple of years.
Right.
In my opinion, the best way to do that is to start with an incoming freshman class. If you're
Right.
going to change a GPA, it needs to really start with current 8th graders
Right.
going
Yes.
forward, because they are picking courses that are high school courses in
Right.
8th grade. So if we were to change, that would be my recommendation, that
Okay,
we would
good.
do it with an incoming course
Okay.
or class.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dr. Nilles?
Is this out on the website for parents and people to take a look at and provide comments? Is that something we typically do?
We have not done that in the past. I don't know if it's a part of the board agenda item that would be visible, but I don't think we've ever
Just
had it before.
just asking.
Yeah. It is.
Okay.
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 Yes, Ms. Carter?
Can you explain the standard credits versus the verified credits?
Yes.
And if you've just received the verified credits, do you still graduate?
Okay, good question, good
Yeah.
question. It does get really confusing. Standard credit is basically you've passed the course. So you have to have 22 of those if you're a standard kid, and you have to have 26 if you're an advanced student. To verify credit means you've passed the course and you've passed the SOL test. So once that happens, then you've got a verified credit. If you're a student who's in 10th through 12th grade, you have to have 6 verified credits, meaning you've passed the class and the SOL test for a standard diploma, and 9 for an advanced diploma. For kids who are coming in now, they're first-time freshmen this year, they have 5 verified credits for a standard or an advanced diploma. That's one of the things the Virginia Department of Education has worked really hard on recently, is decreasing the number of tests to enable students to take courses that are more geared towards their interest, instead of just the core academic things that they're trying to take, and remediation classes that they're trying to retake to pass courses. So that's kind of the difference. So you have to have both. You have to pass the
Okay.
test and you have to pass the class.
Additional questions? This is for information tonight and to vote at our January 15th. So if you look over this and you have additional questions, send them to Dr. Bruce, or we'll look at it again in January. Thank you. Moves us to School Board Policy EFZ, School Nutrition Meal Accounts Procedure.
That is Ms. Moore. Hi.
During the 2018 session of the General Assembly, the Virginia Legislature passed 2 laws that have required Lynchburg City Schools to alter policy EFZ, which was previously adopted by the school board in June of 2017. State law now prohibits the overt identification of students who cannot pay for their meal at the time of service, and in effect, prohibits the imposing of charge limits on students who choose to eat a school meal. The revised policy complies with the new laws, providing that all students receive a school meal regardless of their ability to pay. Meal debt will not be discussed with a student, but communicated directly to parents or guardians using the division's email and phone messaging systems. Per the policy revision, school nutrition staff will contact parents and guardians of students whose meal charges have exceeded $25. In these phone conversations, my staff and I are informing parents or guardians of the need to complete the free and reduced meal application if the family would qualify for meal benefits. The state laws are meant to remove a deterrent to students accessing the school meals program. The revised policy acknowledges the laws and directs procedures for both compliance and fiscal responsibility. Are there any questions?
Questions, Dr. Brennan?
I move that we want to be compliant and have fiscal responsibility, that we make a motion that we pass this.
Let's see if we have any questions first.
Okay.
Dr. Nellis, but I'll take that after we have questions.
I have a comment first. I mean, this is for action tonight. I don't believe it's come to us for a quote reading before, but it's because we got to be compliant with the code, and whether the policy's up to date or not, it's, you know, we still got to be compliant. On page 95 of the packet, or the first page of the policy, I guess it's the new first paragraph, says that the last sentence is school staff may not charge food or beverage purchases. I don't understand how that fits in with the issue with students owing money.
Well, the policy title is School Nutrition Meal Accounts Procedures, and as staff and faculty can eat school meals, it's just a clarification that staff may not charge. They would have to have money at the time of or established an account.
I mean, can they charge now?
No.
They can't. They have money in an account that they can
Yes,
charge off of.
if they yes,
Yes,
but they may not go into debt.
They can't have a negative balance.
Yes.
I guess I propose to amend the policy by taking that last sentence and putting it as a separate paragraph, because it doesn't fit in where it's at now. You know, just as a separate statement.
So that what you're proposing is that we're talking about students in one paragraph and staff in a second.
Right, and just to have this,
Clarification.
this sentence set off from, just to be clear that.
Is there a second? How do I do that?
Yeah, no, that's right.
Second
Is
to.
there a second?
Is there a second to the motion to amend? Second. All in favor?
Well, now you have discussion.
Now we have discussion.
That just means it's worth discussion.
Why didn't you tell me this ahead of
Sorry.
time so that I could write it down? Right, now we have discussion. Is there any discussion?
Well, I just want to say it's a good observation, because when we were reviewing this
Exactly.
with our policy advisory, whatever we're called, that same question came up, like, well, what does this mean? So I think your point is well taken, that it should be a separate paragraph so it's distinguished from.
I guess that means it's unanimous to amend.
All right, I have a motion and a second to amend this policy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now, we are asked to take action on this tonight, so
Yes.
do I have a motion to approve this as amended?
I'll move to approve the amended policy.
Moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, that now takes us to Lynchburg City School Board policy updates. And Mr. Copeland?
Good evening, everyone. These two policies come to you, and I'll go through some specifics. There was a policy subcommittee that met, I think, on November 16th to look at JO. The only change within JO is on page 108 of your board packet towards the top of the page, which includes that specific paragraph. The second component of this is JOD, which is a new policy for Lynchburg City Schools, is recommended to update and standardize our form for release of student data and records.
Okay. Any questions? Comments? We discussed this at length at our policy meeting. This is before us tonight for action. Is there a motion to approve?
I move that we.
Second?
Second.
Any more discussion?
And again, this is to bring us into compliance.
Into
with the
compliance,
code.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next one is Lynchburg Juvenile Detention Center Education Program, Title I, Part D, Neglected and Delinquent Funding for 2018-2019.
I'll handle this one real quickly. It's a pass-through budget to support the detention center's literacy program. It's $5,000 and is used to pay to buy materials and supplies to support their program.
Questions? Comments?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Brennan? Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. School calendar 2019-2020. Dr. Copeland?
All right, I want to start this off with be nice to me. This is the first time that I've attempted calendar. I'll hand out some color copies, just the ones in the board binders were missing. All the details you need to see. Once those are handed out, I have a few introductory comments to make. So the administration is bringing forward tonight our recommendation for a calendar. It is very similar to what is in place for this year. A few nuances that we have added back to it or think is a little bit better fit. As we added back 2 professional development days prior to students arriving in the middle of August. That has varied in the time frame that I've worked here between 5 and 7 days. The teachers this year we had 5 days, and they felt that a couple of more days would have benefited significantly. We kept the Wednesday start as the first day for students because that gave kind of a short week to kind of get all of the classroom norms and expectations laid out. And then when you come back to school on the 19th, you can really roll right into the instruction and the academics. Fall break, which was normally a Thursday and Friday, got shifted to a Monday and Tuesday. That's a 2-day break for staff and students. That move was made to better balance the first and the second quarters. You'll see down at the bottom where all the notes are, quarter 1 in this calendar has 41 days and quarter 2 has 42 days. This year I think it's 39 and 46. So this was just a better balance. It still leaves a 4-day weekend. It still concludes the first quarter with a professional development day. 2 other changes, the March or the winter break, which was 2 days in this current calendar, was shifted to be 1 day, just that Friday the 13th of March, because we had to add the May 5th local city council election day into the calendar. 5 of our campuses are used on election days. And we felt it was best to just make that May 5th a professional development day for staff, not have students there. We needed to pick up our 180th day when we did that, so the easiest place to do that was to take one of the winter break days in March. To sum up a few things, the calendar has 180 student days. It has 11 professional development days. It has 2 half days at the end of semesters. As I stated at the beginning, it is very similar to the way the calendar is laid out this year. And from the teacher perspective, counting the student days and the professional development days, there are 191 teacher work days in the calendar. That's the short presentation I've got. A quick reminder to be nice. This is my first calendar.
All right, questions or comments? Ms. Carter?
I know we did the public talked about the calendar last year. Am I correct? So, yeah, did we do
No, it was
public
2 years
meeting?
ago.
2 years ago? Okay. So, are we gonna Are we going to look at that again this year? Doing that, or do we think we
You mean
need to
holding
do that?
public,
Yes, meetings regarding the calendar.
Just put it out on the, is it on the webpage? Right.
Let's see if there is.
Following the comments that we received tonight, we would post it on the webpage and ask for comments. That way, we felt that since it was identical to this year, and that the feedback from last year's or previous years had been incorporated in the calendar, that we did not need to go back and relive that comment phase again, since we had incorporated everything. So that was the approach we're taking. We'll do as the board directs.
Dr. Nillis?
I think it's useful to, I mean, no comment has sailed through without discussion. And I just mean in general. I mean, it's always, I guess I'd like to put it out there and, you know, for people to provide some feedback on. It looks good to me. I mean, I'm trying to be nice. But
I agree with you. Every calendar will get comment.
Yes.
So I believe.
I'll be sure to pass it along to the appropriate people. No, but I do think we should put it out for
Ms. Mason.
I do think it looks good, and that's not just being nice, but also as we're starting our community conversations, you know, that's also an opportunity so we don't have to share. I mean, it's my recollection that the specific conversations held for the calendar weren't very well attended. I didn't go to all of them. I went to a few of them, and they weren't as well attended as I think they should have or could have been. But I think our community conversations might be a place that we can just kind of incorporate it, even if it's not a separate conversation. You can, you know, have it there and give people an opportunity to give some input if they'd like.
That is wonderful that we listen to the parents, because I had concern too about students being in the building when they were doing the voting. So I think that's wonderful. But I think we do need to hear some from the public, and if we can incorporate it into the meetings we already have scheduled, that'll be great, but so that we won't have to hear it later.
I just have 2 comments, and I will be nice, since I've already had my chance not to be so nice. But that start date for new teachers is July 31st. And that's pretty early in the summer. It also, I think I expressed again my concern in March about having 2 days off, one for professional development and 2 for students, when we tend to have a lot of absenteeisms in January and February, either weather or illness, and that impacts teachers' ability to prepare for SOLs and other tests. I'm just, the only other comment that I have is that we add in time into our day for snow days. I think we accrue, I think, about 11 days because of the additional time that we add, and that's additional days for both teachers and students, and we may or may not use them. But I don't know if there was some way we could look at, can you take some of the days in May after Memorial Day if you don't use them for snow days? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying, and I believe 2 years ago when we had a really light winter, there was a shift within all the school divisions here in Central Virginia to give a day back. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's always on the table to consider. Okay. I don't know that you can program it into the calendar, just something that you would encounter and take advantage of.
Say you need to schedule 180 student days.
Absolutely.
That is correct.
Or 900, I thought we had a certain number of hours.
We go with 180 student days as our starting position.
Okay.
We might get more hours out of it, but I'd say due to the needs of the children in the city, that's to our advantage to get more instructional hours.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Evans.
You talked about the early teacher. I'll just throw out there, I think August 14th is extremely, I mean, we have started lately that early. I think it's very early for a school start. You know, you have kids that go to camp applicants that go to, I mean, the 14th is, I realize we've done it, but that might be some feedback that you get that is early. And the second thing, March, you talked about those 2 days. As a mom with 2 high schoolers, when March comes, we're in desperate need of those 2 days. It always feels like the breaks are all the first half of the year because you have Thanksgiving and you have Christmas. So I think the March 2 days is fabulous. You kind of need a recharge after January and no break in February. And it's kind of nice to have those 2 days. I saw that and I thought that was great.
Isn't it actually 3 days?
No, it's
They
2,
took
the
out the
12th
11th.
and
They
13th.
used to, the 11th is no longer
So what's the 11th? What's the circle there mean?
end of the.
That's
oh,
just
it
the
is
end of
not
the
a
quarter
day off.
designation.
Yeah, no, it's not a
Right.
day off.
I just think you hit that point of the year, and for the older kids, that's really helpful.
It's helpful if they've been in school in February. If they've missed a lot of time in February, it could be a problem.
Right, but if you haven't, it's a long stretch
I
from January
understand.
1st to spring break.
I guess I would like to follow up with Ms. Evans' comment that my work schedule is such that we go from the beginning of the year to middle of the summer before we get a scheduled holiday. So yeah, that's a really long stretch.
It is, it is long.
Yes, Dr.
I
Edwards.
just want to add too, for especially for people who are viewing, this is the main LCS calendar, not the BAS.
Right, right.
So we'll do this one first, and then
Right.
we'll address the BAS calendar.
So any additional questions or comments, just send them to Dr. Copeland.
Forward them on. Just to clarify for everybody, it wasn't our intent not to put it out there and get comments. We just wanted to hear from you first
Yeah, right.
before we put it out
Absolutely.
there. So,
I think we can work something out
Yeah.
at community conversation to get feedback in a, even if it's on a gallery wall type thing.
I appreciate your hearing some of the comments, especially about those days and that day in May where voting occurred with students in school. That was a big concern, and so thank you. Okay, that moves us to item 6. This is Dr. Edwards, and we are talking about
Okay.
pay schedules.
Pay schedules. Grab stuff here. So you have the last, I believe, of the pay schedules. You also have an updated, what I have fondly referred to as the X chart, since it has all the X's on it. And I just want to reiterate, I reordered it a little bit because at the last meeting, one of the things you asked us to do was separate out the admin pay schedule so you could see where principals, speech therapists, where everybody fell. So we pretty much have been following the same protocols that we used with the teacher, bus driver, classified staff. For this last one, the admin staff, in terms of just moving these pay schedules ahead. So you do have a copy. I think at the last meeting, we did not have a cost for the admin, and it was a TBD, and I told you that my threshold was somewhere between total costs, including the VRS and FICA, for the total compensation package would be about 2.4 is where I was sitting comfortably. 2.5 made me nervous, and you can see that we're right at 2.44. So I'm somewhere between somewhat comfortable and panicking at being nervous if we just accomplished all of our goals here. And to the point that the staff member made earlier, it is our intention in our budget process to really try to sort of pull this compensation package off the top and then develop the rest of the Lynchburg City School budget, which we would present to City Council for approval. And I say that with saying, barring no changes in any other funding, because we are subject to the people who fund us with that. So you have, I think, all of them, and thank you to Marie and team who has color-coded them in a way such that you can see different groups of staff members. As we stated before, the administrative group is more than administrators. Often people think about that group as just being central office staff when it really isn't just central office staff. You have your occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, and school psychologists in that group. You also have what I call school-based administrators, your principals, assistant principals, associate principals, our supervisors who spend pretty much most of their time in the schools as well. And you do have some central office staff in the directors. So you have the similar pay tables. We also used the lettering A, B, C, D. We also eliminated the repeating steps so that, and you know, if I gave an example of, I'm looking at the assistant principal schedule for, let's say, a middle school assistant principal on the current this year's schedule, someone on step 1 and someone on step 9 currently this year make the same amount of money. So we use the same protocols to reduce those repeating steps, so actually eliminate those repeating steps. We also moved staff to a comparable or adjusted step where we could for experience as well. And again, separated the administrative pay tables. So what I have for you on the X chart, you can see that we have accomplished 8 of our 9 goals. Some of them were not applicable because they just, you know, we didn't have a living wage question on the admin pay schedules. Though I still have the little line in the last one about the living wage. At our last meeting, we talked about the living wage, and I even shared that the folks who were on the living wage, the mostly classified staff and bus assistants, and how adjusting that for those individual people without adjusting the entire scales might put us back at having repeating steps, or at least very, very close steps. So we did not do that. And again, once I hit my 2.44, I kind of stopped at where I was pretty comfortable in what I thought that we could put forward and actually fund going forward. So I just left it at that. We did move some folks in terms of the admin staff too. Last time I reported how many bus drivers and bus assistants moved to a comparable step, how many classified folks moved to a comparable step. And Marie, I'm going to apologize because I did not write the total number, but I think it's 108. 108. Okay. So we tried to adjust them as well, and moving 78 of the 108 staff members just to, again, follow the same protocol. So we, and I will say, you know, I did not spend as many number crunching hours, and I really want to give, again, a big kudos to Marie's team, Sarah in particular, who's been behind the scenes. Lots of hours to put forth something that we think we can definitely move forward, again, barring any unforeseen circumstances that we would like the board to consider. So, okay. Thoughts, questions?
Questions, comments? Ms. Carter?
I see that on the others, different classifications, there were odd and even years, sort of. But I don't see that here on these.
Okay, so
It just goes, they're straight.
oh, back to the A
percentages.
and B.
Yeah.
It's the same. There should be the 0. Oh, it's not 0. It should be 0, and then it should be A is 1,2, B is 3,4. I think she just, when she was shifting it.
It's just not
yeah,
on there,
yeah.
but that makes sense.
So,
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
And so what, and I also see that there are different percentages of increase for some positions that go from 2.43% to 0.110, 3.41, and one is even 3.41 must be the highest.
the occupational therapist.
Yeah, so.
And that we saw the same types of things on the other guides, and that's because we were trying to work off of existing guides. So some of that was controlled by the existing guides, so that we wouldn't have a pay decrease just to make sure. And we also were trying to incorporate the 3% to make sure that the average for the total pay package was at least 3%. So.
And that was the other question is, we had to reach 3%.
Oh, we hit it.
And I see that we are at
having trouble.
4.62%.
Correct, because we made adjustments to, and that's what and you'll see in the subsequent years, it's not as high.
Right.
So this year in particular, because the one thing that we really wanted to do was make those adjustments to the people who we need to make adjustments for, so that using the scales going forward, they would be pretty accurate. And it also helps us hire new people in, so we don't have as much conflict with existing folks and then having new people come in and trying to figure out where do we place them. So for the 1920 year, if you're looking at the total package, it's a happy year. 2021 is also a happy year, and then we start the alternating freeze for most of the staff with that. So.
Is this sustainable?
It's sustainable. As I said last time, nothing is sustainable when you have a plan to increase and if you stay flat all the time without either A, making significant cuts, which, you know, you get to a point where you can't cut, or B, having a cost of living adjustment or some kind of adjustment on top of your revenue. But the plan that we put in place, working with my team, we looked at what we thought we can do, and we recognize, again, being part of the community and doing our part. We made that initial reinvest in LCS in ourselves, and we really were pretty, my staff will tell you, they look at me, yes, she was pretty tight with the funding this year and trying to save every penny. But I do recognize, and I will, you know, say publicly that there's only so many pennies I can save before I get to a point where there's a baseline for funding the school system that you can't cut from that anymore. So.
Additional comments? Yes.
Just to channel Dr. Gupta, do we look at, for the admin, do we look at different levels, like to stop it at a certain level or not to do these? Because
if you look at and I'm just scanning through a couple of them, they don't have the large, I don't know what to call them, bumps,
right.
You know, when you get to certain levels. We've also reduced the number of steps to get to the top. So some people will hit the top and then be at the top, or what we called OT, even when we did the other tables. So it follows similar suit. In terms of that, and again, trying to even out the percent increases so that we didn't have bubbles.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I love that she's channeling Dr. Cooper because I was having a very similar thought, and I was going to say I hope that I don't misquote him, but I think we've heard from him enough, and I guess based on your explanation, we aren't going to get to a point where those at the top of pay scales are seeing better increases than the lower spectrum.
No, we tried to balance that.
Because I knew that was a concern.
Yeah, I know that was a concern. But we did want, I will go on record, we did want to make sure that all of our employees got a raise for next year.
And I think that's, I mean, deserving. But I know that we do a lot of talk about equal not being equitable. So I want to make sure that, and I know that you are, so I'm not saying that we aren't being equitable, but I just think that for the sake of people listening, we need to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
Dr. Brennan.
Thank you for breaking out under administration the different categories.
Yes.
Have we thought about somehow trying to label that so when it does go out into the discussion of the community, that administration, it includes all these other areas, which is so great for us to see in this meeting and for people involved in it. But this idea of who is actually in the central office doing administration, who is actually involved in the school, such as principals and vice principals and instructors and athletic directors, that those are so different from what I think most people would think about administrative.
I would think so.
And I know we had conversations about updating our budget book to better reflect what our pay schedules look like. I mean, and that was brought to our attention too, even at the last meeting. So by color coding it so you can kind of see the different groups. But if I'm not mistaken, Marie, there was a reason why on the state level that they were classified as admin. Is that, am I speaking correctly? Or?
It's actually a contract.
Okay.
There's 3 different contracts. There's a support staff, there's an administrative contract, and there's a teaching contract.
Right. And I think we talked about that from the state level, but as far as just how this is discussed within the community that we can describe, that or there's a label that's put on that category so people understand what administration is versus involved with the teaching.
Doing that, and the way that even on here we put who's school-based admin,
right.
You know, the orange, and then I think, and the community doesn't have the benefit of the color-coded. Division admin was blue, and then you have other admin who are folks who work in multiple schools, like our therapists. So I think we can definitely put it out there that way so that they understand the differences.
In addition to dispelling any notions of a bloated bureaucracy, it's also, I think, useful to inform people how many of these positions are mandated. We don't have a choice. We have to have these services and provide them. There's growing demand for them. Some of them serve students in private institutions. And so I think that's an important part of the
conversation,
story to tell, or the conversation to share.
Is this for vote or is
No.
this for district?
Well,
What's next?
Well,
That's what.
don't talk about that right there. So the one thing that we need to do, because we would like to shift to actually getting to the budget now. I need to meet with the school staff to start talking about not the salary compensation, but just the budget for next year. So we put it on there as we didn't know how comfortable the board would feel having had the last of the sets, whether or not you wanted to put it forward now or if you wanted to hold it. Putting it forward allows me to now say, okay, we can now shift to working with the school staffs on the budget because I have sort of a number that I know I'm taking off the top, and now I can work with Dr. Beckles to see what could possibly be left to move forward. So that's up to you guys. So we put it up as both information, but if you felt so kindly, and I'll do the Ben thing, be nice to me, you can certainly do that too.
Dr. Coleman?
Madam Chair, I'll yield to the finance chair first and then
Okay.
respond.
Well, I'm still looking at that 4.62. I know we have to do the 3% in order to really to make sure that we're in compliance. But did we explore looking at one that will put us closer to the 3 point instead of the 4.62?
Well, 3, so if we did an average of 3, the thing that we probably would not be able to do would be to adjust the staff. The larger amount that you're seeing, because remember the original pay tables that we did at our budget retreat way back in October, I think when we first had our budget retreat, were around 3. And then we developed the goals that we wanted to have. So when Marie's team went back and said, all right, so let's say if we fixed the folks who are not on a comparable experience step, where would that put them? And that's why you're seeing an increase over that. But the original pay tables that we first presented at the board retreat were around 3, and they didn't include that. So
I think you have to have that.
I just want
Yeah.
right. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I just want to say there was a lot of energy, and especially on the finance and the personnel, and if people just realized how much we were trying to look at this and look at it in an equitable way, and to make sure everyone's on the proper scale and on the proper place, and to call this a different thing. Not the skills anymore, but
Pay schedules.
Pay schedules, yes. Okay.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes, I just walking back in the meeting, so I will ask my questions this way. Since our work session, this is the same presentation from the work session, correct? Yes. Which I totally support. The notion of capping the top and the bottom to the degree that equity affords those who are at the lower levels will have the appropriate take home that they would like. we are working towards that, correct? We are legitimately, honestly, sincerely working in that direction.
Yes.
All right. Well, if this is a matter for some decision tonight, I'm prepared to support what I'm seeing. I asked last meeting, a work session about sustainability, and Sharon, you are convinced that we can do that?
Yes.
Mr. Beckles.
Mr. Beckles. We are convinced with the
Help of.
Yeah, Mr. Beckles, last thing, local effort being whatever it's going to be, state being whatever it's going to be. You feel confident that we can do this?
Under those conditions, that the state
State and local.
does what the state is going to do, or more than what they originally told us they're going to do. The city does at least what they have been doing. Yes, if those factors change, it's a different ballgame.
So I'm in favor of this in hopes that we as a board will recognize that it sounds like some advocacy needs to be done to make sure that those dollars roll in like they should. And so I would certainly advance whatever motion to do so.
But I also want to reiterate what Dr. Edwards said, that this is our priority. That
Yes.
and that we may still have hard decisions to make because we're saying this is our priority.
Fine with me.
I mean,
Yes, sir.
when we say that, I hope the district realizes what Dr. Edwards says. The amount of fund this comes off the top. So if, let's just say, just for clarity's sake, let's say all we have is the 2.4, then all other requests can't be fulfilled.
Right.
And we can't have the salary and the other stuff too.
Right.
That's what Dr. Edwards means by, we take this off the top, and that's all we have. That's it. The rest of the budget discussion is over for next year. Until next year, I guess is what it is. But this will be it.
Yeah. And if we stay where we are with, if all things stay
Everything
the
else
same,
staying equal.
if we get some new money, it's a different
New
ballgame.
money is a different story.
But
yeah,
we
we
built
could do
this
more
based
things.
on, we were trying to be
Existing.
fiscally
Existing.
responsible
Right.
by saying, if all things stayed the same, could we do this?
So I guess translated to my language so that I can understand. To do the 4.62%, and we have challenges, we are prioritizing that, which means that there are cuts or other things
If-
that
if
won't happen.
needed.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Well, I support that.
Not that there are
Not
cuts,
the
but
cuts.
just that we
Howard
haven't
Fund.
done the other parts of the budget. So for example, if I say I want to request, I totally want brand new furniture and equipment and everything for my science lab. Let's just say I'm a science teacher and I really want you to invest $300,000 in making my lab state of the art. During a year where we're doing 4.62% is probably not the year that is going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't do what I call projected comprehensive budgeting, which is where we should be, where we start looking at what are the priorities and then really saying, is this the year that we try to do the following? The wild card for us is always the wild card. I mean, this year's wild card, we had a mold issue that was pretty costly. So I didn't budget for that and put that in the budget, but.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Copeland, I think I'm getting this. If we work on things now, it'll cost less if we do it now. Is that correct?
That's a given. Prices
Okay.
will only rise.
All right, so then,
Well, sometimes we're putting Band-Aids on
Right.
larger wounds, and that's going to catch
so
us as well.
hopefully doing that will help us, but I just can't see with the teacher shortage that we have going on and the recommendations coming at levels higher for increased funding for teacher compensation. I believe that we need to do what we need to do with the wisdom of admin to get this done. And so, to keep dragging it on and talking about it, we need to get to advocacy stage and see what happens.
All right, so Dr. Edwards, are you asking? Yes, Dr. Nellis.
I guess I want to be clear to the public too. This 4.62% is a total increase in personnel costs. It is not a 4.62% raise
Right.
for everybody.
Yeah,
We need, because of reclassification and shifting things around.
And that includes VRS.
And that
FICA.
includes
Includes
the
everything,
FICA
yeah.
and VRS, which is significant. It's another, 23% roughly?
Yes, 26%.
Okay, okay. So I just everybody needs to keep that, remember that, including staff and teachers, and just so. Yeah, I'm not. My anxiety level is elevated about this, but I do support it. I think we need to make it a priority. I'm reassured that the administration's behind it. And it will certainly help with the budgeting process to let everybody know up front that this is the priority. So, unlike previous years. So.
Right. So what is it that you need from us tonight?
Just to approve it. I mean, and let's be clear about what the board approving it means. The board approving it means we get to factor in that number when we go to city council and say this is what we need. But at least we can have a detail itemized for us that this is what we're committed to putting aside.
We're giving you direction that this is your tier 1 priority.
So is that, do we do that in a motion?
I think if there's consent, everybody's.
So is everyone in agreement that
nods
this
their
is what
head,
the board is directing the
that's good
administration to do?
Yeah.
Great. So
You
if there
happy?
is,
You
you
happy
have
with
it.
Do you want a formal motion?
I don't, do we, yep.
We need
said
a
yes.
All right, wait,
said yes, we need a
wait. Do we all know what we're approving? Before, okay, just want to make sure.
Well, I was going to say.
I so move that we, as a board, give direction to the admin to move forward with including the stated amount in the proposed budget that will be submitted to council.
Second. It's been, second. Any more discussion?
Can you rephrase that? Denise, what was the motion again?
The school board approved and moving forward with the proposed amount presented for the pay schedules for the teachers, bus drivers, assistant classified employees, and admin employees to be included in the 2019-20 budget.
Proposed.
Budget
Proposed.
It's proposed.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
it's been motioned, we have second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, great job, thank you. Whew. Nice way to have our meeting in December. Now, but I'm sorry for this, but this came to me after we approved the amendments to the agenda. So do I need to go back and amend the agenda to add this item, or can we just vote on this item?
Should be able to make a motion.
She said that we had to vote on it as a board so that it could be, the fees could be paid, and that we had to state it that way.
Madam Chair, she gave you that to you too.
She gave it to
Me
this-
to give to her.
Right, so
to
we
give to me.
need to carry it out?
Right, so my question is, do I have to amend the agenda to add this? Just add this?
You can just do it as board comment.
All right, so can I do that now?
Well, you want to, with superintendent's comments? and-
Sure, let's go with the superintendent's
Sorry.
comments.
Well, thank you for supporting the pay schedules. That I think that is going to go a long way to really moving us forward. Definitely with my staff and morale. So I do thank you, and more importantly, I thank you for the tons of hours that you've spent looking at tiny little charts with lots of numbers on them, and that we kept adjusting it. So again, thanks for that. Just a couple quick updates. Again, a lot of thank yous to everyone who attended our open house that we had on November 13th. I mentioned it at the work session, but again, just want to thank the more community involvement and support, the better. Again, I had the opportunity of spending some time with Ms. Bragg and Ms. Fowler and young ladies at Dunbar Middle School, the Rubies, to hang out with some wonderful, wonderful young ladies, and I tell you, they made my day. So one of the things I'm real passionate about is mentoring, so being able to work with middle school girls and to elevate them and show them that they can do anything that they put their minds to was really, really great. So I want to thank those staff and the principal for allowing me to do that. Looking forward to doing more of that. I've also had the opportunity this week to speak to the NAACP at Diamond Hill Baptist Church. Very well attended meeting, and we had our own version of community conversation right there. And again, a lot of the issues that were discussed here today were discussed at that community meeting. You know, that's one of the things I'm passionate about, getting out into the community and sharing our strategic plan and the things that we want to do for our students. I continue to meet with my individual principals and my small groups as we focus on many of the issues and concerns and great stuff. Love hearing about the great stuff that we're doing in our schools. We had a kickoff to our special ed monitoring, which is occurring this week. So we do have the monitors here from DOE joining us and visiting our schools. Looking forward to the wonderful things that they're going to say about our schools. I have two shout outs that were pre-printed for me, so I'm going to read those to you. One of them is through the cooperative efforts of Central Liberty University and our elementary movement ed teachers. Fifth grade students recently participated in an activity called Tar Wars. That's part of our physical and health growth for our students. The activity provided students with information about health-associated risk of tobacco in all forms, including e-cigarettes and juuling. And for those of you who might not know what juuling was, I sent you a little bit on that just to show what juuling is. And we did have some health career students from Liberty University who worked with Centra staff to do the presentation. So we tried to get some young folks in here to work with our fifth grade students. And just a special thank you to Dr. John Cannon, who was a driving force, and Dr. Jay Salmon for that. We also have a special shout out to Member One Federal Credit Union, who is providing us with 40 CPR Anytime kits to be placed in 20 school libraries for teachers to check them out to help fulfill the portion of the hands-on CPR recertification requirement that we have for certification. Virginia did pass legislation that this is a recertification requirement for teachers, and Member One thought this would be a wonderful way to support our staff, and we're real grateful to them. And I do believe they're going to be here at our next board meeting. They also did it for Fort Hill, Empowerment Academy, Hutchinson, and Laurel as well, which I thought was great. So thank you to them and the American Heart Association for this. And as students shared, we have wonderful things going on with our students in their athletic program, and kudos to Glass for their accomplishments and heritage this week. And if you're not busy on Saturday, come out and support our teams. And again, I am looking forward to December 10th, community conversation. And should there be a weather event, we will be communicating via all of our channels, social media, letting people know what the new date will be. We will definitely have it. We just might have to find a new date if there is a weather event for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Board comments? Before we go into board comments, we need to vote on this motion. Ms. Spinner, do I read it exactly the way she wrote it? With names and all? Do I need to read the payment of that?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
It's good.
All right. So we have a motion under section 22(1)-83, payment of employees' legal fees and expenses. If an employee of a school board is arrested, indicted, or otherwise prosecuted on any charge arising out of any act committed in the discharge of his duties, or if an employee of a school board is made a defendant in any civil action arising out of his actions in connection with his duties, the school board may pay the legal fees and expenses of such employee. And I am asking for someone to approve a motion to approve the payment of the legal fees of Ms. Lifford in the amount of $500 pursuant to the Virginia Code section 22(1)-83. Is there a motion to so approve? Is there a second? Is any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. Now, board comments? Ms. Carter?
I was happy to be able to get to 2 tours before the VSBA conference. So hopefully we can look at that date next year. And I just wanted to send 2 shout outs to Sandusky Elementary and Fort Hill School. To Sheila Carter, who gave me the tour at the, Sandusky Elementary. Wonderful tour, wonderful person, and it's just, they're doing great things there, and the stained glass window or entrance is beautiful. And to Catherine Baker with Fort Hill, and I don't know how often people go to visit Fort Hill, so I drove in an equitable fashion and went there, and kind of surprised them showing up. But she was awesome. She's a social worker there, and just the way that she spoke and the language she used, which is really progressive and positive language, and just the way that they really look at each student individually is awesome. And just a shout out to the coaches, the glass football coach and the heritage coach. I talked to him right after convocation and said, make sure whatever the competition was to beat them. And so he did that, and he's doing great. And just tell the football players that, who's the team they're playing? Phoebus. That they put their socks and shoes on the same way they do, so we can bring home that trophy to the big orange country. And just a shout out to Dr. Gupta. He said he misses us and we miss him. And the finance, the individuals that really worked to make sure that we were able to offer or even propose this salary or the change in the pay scale, just all of the time and energy that Marie G and her team, and I forgot the 2 ladies, but they're Sarah and Diane, just wonderful, and they had a positive attitude. So that was great after all those numbers, and just wonderful for that. And the thank you cards for Fort Hill and Paul Monroe.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. What a great meeting we have had. I do want to indicate that I passed out a sheet entitled March for More, and of course, being avid readers, I don't need to read it to you because you know how to do that. But this is a ground level initiative out of Richmond Public Schools. The superintendent, similar to what our superintendent is proposing, that we fully support, is to get out in the community. From that, the community wanted to know what can they do to help. And so here is an initiative that the Richmond Public School Board and superintendent are doing and inviting those around the Commonwealth to join them who can. And that is this Saturday, December the 8th. They are actually leading a rally that will commence at the Martin Luther King Junior Middle School to the Virginia State Capitol. And then there will be speeches from persons in that division as well as others who would like to share, recognizing that there is underfunding, that the caps on SOQ support positions is creating a difficulty for mental health issues to be addressed with appropriate staff. And you can see that this 20% huge dilemma that has never been corrected, they are advocating for more money for teachers to get paid, better schools and all of that. So if you're interested, you can see School Board Member Bob Brennan, who is really driving some things relating to this myself, and maybe we can go and be supportive. But Madam Chair, thank you for your leadership. I know we've got some meetings planned, but this is another part. Everybody on the board may not be able to do this, but this is another important part of how a local school division can help the Commonwealth to appreciate the need to deal with these underfunded dynamics, the mandates that you talked about, School Board Member Sinha, that don't get addressed unless we put that level of pressure. And so also thank you to everyone who was able to go to VSBA. I'm grateful to serve a second year as regional chair, and I've also been appointed to the Virginia High School League Executive Committee. So anything that I can do to be helpful as it relates to that, I'm more than grateful to do it. And in closing, I want to say to Ethel and all of the persons who are working in that area, those who come and meet before us in meetings, I think School Board Member Bob Brennan did an excellent job. Madam Chair, you were superior in my personal opinion. that we want persons to get involved. We have so many people who want to get involved that it's really taxing on the staff that we have. But we have the University of Lynchburg. We've got group after group, week after week. Join us in being a part of the solution to the challenges that we have.
Thank you. Other board comments? Dr. Nilles?
I'd like to acknowledge the Heritage football team for a stellar season, not just because they're going to the state championship, but for the consistency over the past years, especially the coaching staff. And also EC Glass. Coach Woody there has really turned the program around there. I think it speaks to the character of the coaches, and it's good for the kids. It's character building for the football players. You know, they're a diverse group, and they have to work as a team. And the expectations are there, to work as a team, to put in the hard work, and sometimes it takes years for the payoff to show up. And Lynchburg is seeing that in both schools this year. So I want to acknowledge that, thank them for their effort, and I think it reflects, I think they're representative of all the teachers in our school system.
And I would like to finish by thanking the staff, how hard you work, how many hours you go beyond. We really, as a board, truly appreciate all that you do, and we don't have the opportunity often to say that. But going to Dr. Edwards, who I think it was almost a year ago that we sat in these chairs and we announced our decision to bring you to Lynchburg City Schools. So thank you for coming and for accepting the challenge and for helping us become a better board. And to my fellow board members, this journey has just started. And I'm looking forward to it. And I wish you the best during the rest of the months of days in December. Look forward to seeing you next Monday and in January at our school board meeting on the 15th. Thank you.